Hi, this is Lady Lecture UK, and this is a Dreams Gadget tutorial. This is part 2 of the puppet tweak menu, which is a third part of the puppet as a gadget. And I'm sorry that I've left it so long to do this. I just left the gadget tutorials on pause for a bit to do other things. So we're going back to doing some gadget tutorials. Now, I have tried to make this tutorial a few times over the weeks. And I've, to be honest, I've struggled a little bit with testing the various parts of this tweak menu, because some of these options in there, even with experimentation, I just don't know what they do or how they work. I must say that puppet physics is not my area, and we're getting into parts of this that I genuinely don't understand. So it wouldn't be fair for me to do a tutorial on them with not really understanding what it was that I was saying. So I'll cover the stuff that I do know. There are things in here that would need to be expanded. There are other people that also work on tutorials for these things, so check out Dream School if there's something specific that you are confused about. I hate doing tutorials when I don't really know it, but I have to do a part 2, so here we go. Right, we've done part 1, which is this page. Now we'll do part 2, which is the lower body movement. And basically what we have here are various selections of sliders that affect the feet and the legs and the movement when you're walking or running or jumping or whatever. And some of these are obvious what they do, and others are not so obvious and need only really work in combination with other sliders. So it's basically you have to experiment with sliding these things backwards and forwards to try and get the movement that you want from your puppet. And don't forget that all of this can be done dynamically during the game, because you do have input sockets, and you can use keyframes as well to change these numbers when you're in particular zones, or if you've gained an extra power or something like that. All of these can be changed dynamically during the game, so you're not fixed with what you have here. Right, the top slider is Slidiness. Despite experimentation, it says it allows you to run on the spot while accelerating. I haven't managed to get it to do anything. So it says you need a very high acceleration to see the effect. I don't know how high it needs to be, but I haven't seen an effect when moving this and moving the acceleration. So I will have to leave that one. The second one down, Skatiness. It's not as obvious as you would think. But there's your skatiness. As you get closer to 100%, his feet get closer together. You can see his feet are sliding along the ground rather than being lifted up. So they're sliding on the floor rather than coming up as steps. So that was what that does. Match floor angle, on the other hand, is pretty interesting. So let's go in and have a look. I've put in a slope. So when you walk up a slope with a puppet, he tries to keep upright, and he bends his knees in order to stay upright and walk up a slope. But if you alter this, match the floor angle, let's put it really quite high. Instead of doing that and bending the legs, he'll tip backwards and walk up the slope. So there's a little bit of tipping backwards. Things like robots and things, this is what you'd expect, I think, it to do. And as you get down to the bottom, you see him straighten up a bit. I think a little bit of leaning back is probably appropriate for most characters, so you might want to play about with that. But that's what that does. Let's put that back there. Lean into strength. When the character runs around in a circle, you can see he's leaning with his shoulders. The legs, they sort of get a little bit weird and lean into that. You can change the strength of that with this slider. And this one is foot separation. I think it's good to watch this from here. You can see it easily. So if I put it at 0%, you'll see the feet walk in front of each other. So they cross in front of each other. And as we pull this over, the legs get further and further apart until at maximum where they're actually walking either side of the hips in a sort of a natural manner. But good for robots. So I think, what was it, 40%? Was it? I can't remember what it was, 40%. That's what they think is the natural gait for feet. Bicycle feet. This makes the feet move in a sort of slightly circular motion. Again, it's one of those things that's very subtle, but use it in combination with other things and it becomes a little bit more obvious. Stompiness. This lifts the knees up as you walk. Good for soldiers marching. And this is another one that I haven't worked out what it does. Apparently it creates a more heavy tread for very large creatures. I've tried it with very large models and I really don't see what it's doing. So if you do know, leave a mention in the comments. Right, stridiness. This is how far the legs are wide apart like this. So if you want a smaller step, you'd move it to the left. I apologise if you can hear the noise of my next door neighbour's kid outside. It's nothing I'm going to do. It's a very hot day. I'm not going to shut the windows. Right, minimum stride time. So this is how fast he's going to walk. So you could get him walking very, very fast like this, or very, very slow. Centre of gravity. This can make him very heavy on his steps or very light like this. Just moves the centre of gravity of the body. Bounciness, that makes him walk with a bounce in his step. I find that tall men quite often walk with a bit of a bounce, so it makes an interesting walk right there. Right, upper body then. Our first one is the motion sensor movement. This is an interesting one because it's set at 50% for the motion sensor movement. So as you're moving your controller around, the shoulders and arms and legs and head of your character will move with it. So if I do that, you can see there is some movement. And depending on how somebody holds their DS4, your character could end up with a situation where its head is really far back or too far forward or over to the left or whatever. If you don't want the motion sensor movement to affect your character, just put it to 0. And then there won't be any of that and the character will just be stiff and straight. If you want a sort of human fall flat type thing going on, where, you know, I can manipulate my character in all sorts of ways like this, then you put it over to the maximum. So I would say you're probably going to have this somewhere between there and 0. Lean lag, again, this is the same as with the feet, but this time it's with the head and the shoulders. Sassiness, this is a nice one. This can create a really nice looking model. It moves the shoulders and the hips in a sexy way. There we go. And that's sassiness. And then you've got sway. You get sort of a bounce from side to side. Lumberingness. Sort of jauntily walks then. Stiffness. Again, good for robots and things. Arm vigor. This is how fast the arms pump up and down like this. How far they swing. And arm flail. This is how far they circle round like that. Springiness, that makes them very wobbly. So again, a human fall flat thing, you can make your characters really wobbly and ragdolly. Breathiness, this is really more obvious when they're standing still. So this is the normal breathiness. You can see they're breathing in and out, but at 100 and they're breathing in and out a lot more prominently. I see this quite a lot in some of our character models that people put in. They quite like the breathiness thing to make it look sort of real. Anticipate turn. This is to do with the head turning before the body turns. It's a subtle one. You might want to fiddle about with that. Right, our third page is to do with rigging. I'm not an expert on rigging in any way. I haven't really done very much rigging at all. However, what I can tell you is that in order for all these tweak menus to work, they need to know what part is what, which part of the body they're actually affecting. So it needs to know which is its hands, which is its legs, which is its feet, which is its head. And it does this with this structure diagram. So if I hover over the head, I'm apparently recording, I don't know why. If I hover over the head, it's going to flash green and blue like that. And that's saying that it recognises that this is the head, and this is the neck, the chest, etc. And all these pieces, it's been programmed to recognise these are the parts of the body and this is where they are. If I was to remove them from the structure, so if I press triangle over, you'll see his hand and arm there have gone floppy. So as he's moving around, you see they're all floppy, not part of the rigging structure. But you can always put them back in. You just, like you do with an emitter, you select it, you get this line, and you choose the arm there, and a line, and you'll choose the hand. And now it knows. And this is no longer floppy. It's been moved into a weird position because it went all floppy. So you'll need to alter that, but it does now know that that's the hand and it will move accordingly. So you wanted to put extra bits onto your character. You want to create a character from scratch and not using the mannequin, but you are using, you want to use a tweak menu like this, then you can delete it and then you just select all the rigging parts of your new character so it recognises which bit is what. And there you go. You've got your whole new character rigged up. Right. Let's get to behaviour now. Puppet behaviour. Now, I've had trouble with this. A lot of this makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. These, as you can see, I can't turn them off. I can't toggle them. That is because there is some logic in the chip of this puppet that has these permanently turned on. So it doesn't matter what you do to this. You'd have to delete all the code in here to do with these buttons before you could adjust them. This is saying what tag to follow and distance. Though if I tag them on and put them in, I don't see how it actually does anything. It might do when it's in follow mode or turn towards mode, but I'm going to leave this because I don't really know how you're supposed to use this, and a brief experimentation with it has not got me very far, so I'm going to leave this page. I can tell you that the auto look does work, so hang on, let's try that again. So if I don't possess the puppet, you'll see his head moves around to look at the imp, and he sort of turns his body, and there you can see he's following the imp with his head. If we turn it off, he doesn't now, he ignores it. So depending on whether you want your puppet to be alive or not alive before you possess it, then you might want to toggle this. Procedural animations. Things like the idle animation, procedural walk animations, you can turn these off, and the procedural jump you can turn on. I haven't done enough with the puppet to know how these things work, so you're going to have to find a tutorial from somebody else to go through this page, because this is a bit of a mystery to me at the moment, because I don't do an awful lot of puppet animation and stuff. Right, physical properties then. Visible, not visible, that's the same as any object. Movable, not movable, again the same. Collidable or not collidable, same as any object, they've all got these in, so you should be familiar by those by now. Collision shape. Now this is our collision box. It's like a little lozenge, and you can change the position of it on the puppet. Now you'll notice the default does not include the head of the puppet. Now, how many times have you seen your head get stuck in doorways and flick backwards and things like that? All you have to do to fix that is change the height of this to include the head. I have no idea why the default puppet does not include the head as part of its collision shape. I recommend you probably do that for all of your characters, and that stops it from getting that weird thing where the head sort of disconnects itself. You'll also notice that the arms are not part of the collision shape. So you can expand it so the arms will be part of it as long as they're down by the sides. But otherwise, it's only going to cover the body. This is the density of your puppet. This will affect the way physics works on the puppet and gravity and that sort of thing. Again, I haven't really done much experiments with that to tell you what to change this and why you would want to. So I'm going to leave that. But this collision shape is quite important for making sure that your puppet is going to collide correctly. And you might want to fiddle about with this to get this correct for your puppet. So if you've got a really big hairdo or a hat or something, you'll almost definitely have to move some of these around, which is what I was not familiar with this. I've created a lot of characters and it never even occurred to me that the collision box was independent of what I'd made and that you'd have to change it. So be aware of that. Right. That's this page. This is the collides with. You see this on all of the objects as well. This just looks for labels, and it's when it's set to collide. This is what it will collide with. If you unclick them, then it won't be collidable with any of them, even though you've set it to be collidable. If you unclick all of these, then there's nothing for it to collide with, because it's got to have one of these labels, even if it's unlabeled. So there we are. That's what that does. And you can use this to toggle things like, so if you don't want the puppet to be collidable with a particular object in the world, you can set that object to have this label and unclick this. And again, these can be dynamically created using keyframes or inputs, so you can toggle these on and off during the game. This is a label, so you can label your character up. It's probably a good idea to stick your label friend for your player, and then if you've got things like guns in their hand and everything and you don't want bullets to hit your player, you can say don't hit non-collide with friend. That's the sort of things that's useful for. Detected. This is detecting whether or not this has been detected by anything, any sort of sensor, a zone or what have you. So you can wire out this to do something. So but that's any sort of sensor. It's detecting any sort of detection whatsoever. And this one here is to do with player ownership, and this is some area of Dreams that I have no expertise in whatsoever, because that's to do with multiplayer. I can't make multiplayer things, so I don't, and so I can't experiment with that, so I'm going to leave that one alone. Sound. This is the sound effects within the puppet, so any sound effects that you put inside the puppet can be controlled with the volume here. And you can set the sound channel that this is always going to make. Probably character is what you want, and then all the sounds that the character makes, you can set the volume for here. So there we go. That's it. That's our blank puppet menu. I'm sorry that I'm skipped through that relatively quickly, but there's a lot of menu options in there, and I don't know all of them, so I didn't want to mislead anybody in thinking that I'm expert in these things. I'm not expert in every area of dreams, and this is one of the areas that I haven't had an awful lot of experience in because I've been concentrating on other things. So there we go. But thanks for watching. I hope some of that was useful information for you, and I'll catch you in your dreams.